Welcome to Thursday's edition of Renew Plus. I'm Pastor Tony. Thank you for joining us again today. Again, we're in week number 12 of our Access Road, Grace and Peace. We're right in the middle of a story here that I just love. I love this story and how this woman stood and fought the fight of faith for her family and how restoration came to her life because of it. Yesterday, if you remember, if you were with us, if you weren't, you might want to go back and listen to that one first. That we kind of got into the story and kind of left it halfway, but there was a woman in Shunem, a Shunammite woman who entertained and brought hospitality to the man of God, Elisha, the prophet Elisha. When he came to town with his entourage, with his ministry team, she would, first of all, she just fed them, and then they came pretty often, frequented them, and she fed them often, every time they came through town. And then she finally told her husband, she said, well, why don't we just build a room in there for this man of God? He can stay there with us. You know, not just eat here, but he can stay with us, have a nice place to stay. So they did that. And over a period of time, Elisha inquired about, is there something that we can do for you? And of course, she wouldn't say anything, but Gehazi, his servant, said, I know that this woman doesn't have a son. And her husband is older, in other words, past probably childbearing. And so there's not a whole lot of hope for them starting a family at this age. So Elisha called her back in and said, you know what? A year from now, you're going to embrace a son. Sure enough, a year from then, she embraced her own son, miraculous, supernaturally. And just pays to take honor to the man of God. I can tell you to Jesus, who is a representation. Elisha is a representation, a type and shadow of Jesus. His name means God is salvation, and that's playing out right here. This is a type and shadow of what Jesus, this Savior, brought to all of us. And so over a process of time, this child began to grow and went out to see his daddy in the field one day and complained about a headache. Now, it wasn't just any kind of headache. It was severe to the point that the daddy turned around to a servant and said, take him back into his mother. And he went in there and sat in her lap till about lunchtime and died. And, that's just devastating. I mean, the very fact that, that she would have a child at old age and then all of a sudden it'd just be, a toddler or whatever, her toddler son, be taken away from her like that after he had grown up a period of time in her house. That had to be devastating. And her emotions were probably just all over the place. But she laid that child on the bed of Elisha where he stayed, on his bed, just stretched him out there. He was dead, of course, and went out and told her husband out in the field, I'm going to see the man of God. And he questioned her about this. And this is where we started out in verse 23 yesterday. And we're going to pick it up from verse 23 again. And the husband said to her, why are you going to him today? It is neither a new moon nor a Sabbath. And she said, it is well. Now, again, we pointed this out yesterday. That one phrase right there, it is well, is the Hebrew word shalom. That's where we get peace from. And remember, that is a branch word coming off a root word shalem, which brings with it the idea of wholeness, completeness, preservation, restoration, safety, health, prosperity. All of those things are included in that word shalem. So when you have a branch word in the Hebrew, it never really gets away from that meaning. It carries with it that meaning. So when she said, it is well, she's actually making a declaration of faith. She is saying something in faith that she's believing that goes beyond the natural circumstances and events. Now, this woman in her grief was not denying this. She was actually believing in the shalom peace of God that would bring restoration to her boy's life and to her household. She was believing for something higher. And see, that's what faith is all about, going beyond what we see naturally, what we're feeling emotionally, and believing in something that only God could do and give us in life. So when she makes that statement, it is well, that's a declaration of her faith. She is saying shalom peace over this situation. So verse 24, then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, drive and go forward and do not slacken the pace for me unless I tell you. In other words, she was telling her servant, we're going to get on this donkey, on this train right here, and we are going to put the pedal to the metal, and we're not stopping until we get to the man of God, all right? So they laid a drag out of the parking lot, so to speak, out of the driveway. Verse 25, and so, I'm kidding, by the way, and so she departed and went to the man of God at Mount Carmel. So it was when the man of God saw her afar off that he said to the servant Gehazi, look, it's the Shunammite woman. Verse 26, please run now and meet her and say to her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child? So he was kind of picking up. He was seeing this Shunammite woman making tracks, making a fast pace toward her off in a distance. He knew something must be up right here. She wouldn't be doing this otherwise. And so she responded to Gehazi, the servant, and said, it is well. So notice she's saying the same thing. She said shalom. She said that to her husband. She's saying this to Elisha and the servant right here. It is well. Well, again, naturally speaking, was it well? No, naturally speaking, her child was dead. But she was believing for shalom peace. She was believing for wholeness and completeness and restoration that only God can and will bring to her. Now, she was cooperating in faith right here. She was just saying what she believed. She said, it is well. Verse 27, now when she came to the man of God at the hill, she caught him by the feet, but Gehazi came to try to, near to push her away. But the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is in deep distress. I want you to see that even though she was believing in faith, in her heart, she was believing for wholeness and shalom peace and restoration. Notice her soul is getting battered here, and they could tell it. We're in a fight, we're in a battle. That doesn't mean that your soul and your emotions are not going to give you fits. But you know what? We don't have to give in to those emotions. We can allow our faith to override that. We can allow what we believe in our heart to be true, to override those emotions. Again, we're not in denial about this. Is not denial. We are believing for something higher that can change the circumstance and the event to bring wholeness and completeness into our life. So notice her soul is in distress. I mean, she's fighting the battle right here. There's some things going on in the head right here. So he said, the Lord has, but he said, and the Lord has hidden this from me, what's going on with her, and has not told me. In verse 28, and she said, did I not ask a son of my Lord, or did I ask for a son of my Lord, and did I not say, do not deceive me? All right, now he figured out what's going on. I believe this is where the light dawned to Elisha, and he said, this is, and the Lord, I think, revealed this to him at this point. There's something going on with her son, and it is not good. So verse number 29, then he said to Gehazi, get yourself ready, and take my staff in your hand, and be on your way. And if you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not answer him, but lay my staff on the face of the child. In other words, he's telling Gehazi, you better make tracks back to her house. Take my staff with you. Don't get on Facebook. Don't get on Twitter, Instagram, social media. Don't do any of this stuff. Don't have any conversations with anybody. Don't socialize. You keep your face like a flint. Keep it straightforward. Don't turn to the right and left. And get on down there and put my staff on this boy, on the face of the child. So verse 30, and the mother of the child said, as the Lord lives, and as my soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her. Again, there's identification here. She is saying, I am sticking with you. I'm going to get my miracle here. I'm going to believe God for salvation. Remember, Elisha means God is salvation. I'm going to believe for salvation and shalom, peace, restoration, and wholeness about this situation. She's not going to let go. I tell you, we can learn a lot from this woman right here. She was strong in faith. And so, in verse number 32, then when Elisha came into the house, there was a child lying dead on the bed. So again, that was a problem right there. Now, to make a long story short, he goes on in there and raises this child up from the dead, all right, and gives this boy back to his mother. Now, how did this happen? Well, if it's the old saying, if the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, then why did the Lord give again? He didn't take away. This is the devil trying to steal and rob and make her life less than whole and complete, taking something that God gave her. And you know what? She stood in there in faith and said, it is well, it is shalom, peace. And she believed God for salvation in her house. And you know what? She got it. She got it. She got exactly what she believed for. Now, this is not really, this story has a sequel to it. It's really good. So let's go over to chapter 8. We'll try to get through this real quick here. But 2 Corinthians chapter 8, on down the road a little bit, this woman continued to entertain Elisha and his entourage when they came to town. The child grew, and her family and all that. But Elisha gave her a warning one day and told her, he said, there's coming a famine in this land. It's going to last for 7 years. And it'd probably be better for you just, get on out of town, go somewhere else. So she did that. She packed up her and her family and all their stuff, and they went down to the land of the Philistines, and they lived for that 7-year period. And so at the end of that 7-year period, they came back to their land, to their homeland there, and they were going to go back to their farmland that they had there. That famine had taken its toll, I'm sure. But they came back there, and in order to do that, they had to go back and appeal to the king to have that land, that farm, and all their belongings restored back to them again. And so this is where I'm going to pick this story up, because this is a great sequel right here. And in verse number 3, it says, it came to pass at the end of those 7 years that the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to make an appeal to the king for her house and for her land. So the same woman who had, the child miraculously and then have died, and of course said, it is well, went to the man of God, and the boy was raised up from the dead. Same woman here. She's going to the king to make appeal for her house and land to be restored. So verse number 4, then the king taught with Gehazi. Remember Gehazi, the servant of Elijah, the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me, please, all the great things that Elisha has done. So the king's asking, he said, I want to hear all the good stories of what the Lord has done through Elisha. All these great miraculous stories. So Gehazi began to relay some of those. But then notice in verse number 5, it says, now it happened as he was telling the king how he had restored the dead to life. Now, what was he referring to? He was referring to him raising this boy from the dead, of this Shunammite woman. He's telling this story to the king. And notice what happens. He says, while he was telling this story, that there was the woman, the Shunammite woman, whose son had been raised or restored to life, appealing to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, O Lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. So Gehazi was relaying this story to the king, and here all of a sudden this woman was. This woman and her family and her son was standing there making appeal to the king for her, the restoration of her land and her farm. Oh man, do you think this woman was probably saying it is well and peace over this situation as well? Yeah. She didn't get weaker. She got stronger about this. Man, I'm telling you what, this woman was strong in faith, believing for something. And she was going in there to make appeal, but she wasn't going there to get it back. But I want you to see how this all was orchestrated and choreographed and arranged for her. That while she was believing, and I believe she was actively believing for shalom, peace over this situation, for her land and house to be restored to her, I believe the Lord was arranging all of this. Gehazi was not without coincidence, just happened to be there, and the king asked about the stories, and then he was telling about this woman whose son was raised from the dead, and all of a sudden, there she is. And so notice what happens. Verse number 6, and when the king asked the woman, she told him, so that the king appointed a certain officer for her, saying, restore all that was hers, and all the proceeds of the field from the day that she left the land until now. I want you to see this. She got preferential treatment and favor because peace, shalom, peace from God was working on her behalf to restore her land back to her. So after hearing this story, the king turned around and said, I want a special officer, a certain one must be the best one he had, special agent, special officer, to be assigned over this particular thing so that she would get not just her house and land back, but all the proceeds of the field that she left from the day that she left it until now. That is restoration. That is wholeness. That is shalom, peace in operation and in manifestation to make our life whole, complete, and restored. And notice how God orchestrated all this right here. All because she believed in something greater. And she walked in peace and declared peace over her situation when it looked like it was dead. It looked like it was gone. That she was no way she was going to get it back. She stood and believed in faith. Beyond the circumstances, beyond her emotions, beyond what she could feel. There's a peace that passes all understanding that will bring wholeness and completeness when we just allow it to run its course and restore and make our life whole and complete. Man, that's awesome. That is just good news. Well, that's all the time I've got for today. Join us again tomorrow as we finish up this week. If you'd like additional materials, go to tonycowan.org and we will see you tomorrow.